some of you know me, but is anybody here that's really new and needs an introduction to who is Prahlad Maharaj? You have to start somewhere, so you all know who is Prahlad Maharaj. All right. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, it describes that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, daily, from Gadadhar Pandit. If you follow the lineage of Gadadhar Pandit, he had disciples. And because a gift of Gadadhar Pandit was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, his disciples became very gifted in reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of you may know that in Lord Chaitanya's line, in Gadadhar Pandit's line, is Haridas Pandit. Haridas Pandit is one of the persons who Krishnadas Kaviraj requested the blessings to write Chaitanya Charitamrita. He went and asked all the Vaishnavas, but there's this nice section about Haridas Pandit. Haridas Pandit was a worshipper of Govindaji, but he was also very proficient speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, just as Gadadhar Pandit was absorbed in the worship of Gopinath and very proficient in speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. So, second generation, disciple of Gadadhar Pandit's disciple, Haridas, became the spiritual master of Gangamata Goswamini, who was renowned for her expertise in reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's 3 generations after Gadadhar Pandit. So who can imagine what it was like hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit? What was it like for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was Krishna himself, in the mood of Radha, hearing from Gadadhar Pandit, who's Radha, recite the glories of Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam? Too bad they didn't have MP3 recorders. MP4, yeah, okay, or digital videos. But in Chaitanya Bhagavat it says Lord Chaitanya would hear from him, Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj, hundreds of times. You know that thing in iskcon, we've heard a story, and then somebody tells the story, and you say, I heard that one. Can you tell it? I want to hear something new. Not Lord Chaitanya. Hundreds of times. Say it again. Say it again. Because that's the way of relishing and receiving the spiritual benedictions of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like making sandalwood paste. Very similar. Very simple. Piece of wood as big as your fist, flat stone, some little water. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And what happens, it's just a very simple motion, or maybe back and forth, but generally round and round and round. And the wood becomes paste. The paste is very fragrant. The wood is fragrant, but the fragrance becomes even stronger when it becomes paste. And you apply it, especially in hot weather, very cooling and soothing. Srimad Bhagavatam similarly is meant to be relished again and again and again and again. And the sweetness, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam starts to become assimilated within your system. Your system becomes transformed. Very interesting. He's taking pictures and his phone is singing. So this is just a little mini immersion in the sound vibration of one of the most well-known, popular, famous, and loved sections of the Bhagavatam. Of course, Krishna's pastimes, 10th canto. But here in the 7th canto, Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Nrsingadev. Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Have you heard that one before? You know, you've heard of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami. Oh. You've heard of Lord Chaitanya? Okay, good. So, Lord Chaitanya had principal associates, and amongst them were the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Kind of. All of our altars in iskcon have the 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan. So one of them is Rupa Goswami. Following Lord Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami was the next in line of disciplic succession. Sanatana and Rupa Goswami. So one of the books that he wrote, that the BBT has published, is Laghu Bhagavatamrita. And Laghu Bhagavatamrita, in real simple terms, is an expanded presentation of chapter 3 of Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam, describing the avatars of the Lord as they appear in this world. It's one of the 6 questions, and he wrote a whole book on it, and it's that thick. So there's a lot of information from various scriptures about the avatars. And quoting Padma Purana, very authoritative, Rupa Goswami indicates, amongst all the avatars, there are 3 that are Shad Aishvarya Purna, 6 opulences in full. Now, Bhagavan means 6 opulences in full. However, Rupa Goswami explains, making reference to Padma Purana primarily and other places, each of those forms of Bhagavan have all the potencies, but they don't exhibit or manifest all of those potencies. And there are degrees in this, without all the technical information. But 3 exhibit them in full. Krishna, Rama, and Nrsimha. So the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev to protect Prahlad Maharaj, you know, it has our place in our iskcon rituals, our iskcon activities. We sing Nrsingadev prayers after every arti. There's a reason that we do that. Besides we like Lord Nrsingadev. And he is the removal of obstacles on the path of bhakti. Just as Ganesha is the removal of obstacles on the path of fruitive activity, where does Ganesha get the power to do that? From Nrsimha. That wonderful verse in Brahma Samhita that says the 2 tumuli, little protrusions on the top of an elephant's head, little bumps, tumuli. Upon those 2 bumps, or tumuli, The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, places his two lotus feet. That's how Ganesha gets his power to remove obstacles in the path of fruitive activities. But that form of Govinda that places his feet upon Ganesha's head is Lord Nrsimhadev, our acharyas describe. So we just worship Lord Nrsimhadev because we want obstacles on the path of achieving bhakti to be removed. And so does Prahlad. Prahlad gives teachings that teach the way of pure devotional service. There's an obstacle on the path of pure devotional service, and that's our attachment to the temporary. Yes? It's an obstacle. You know many of you know the story, the wedding story. I came across, this is a Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's story. It was illustrated in the second Back to Godhead magazine I read. That was a few years ago, about 40 years ago. 48 years ago. On the occasion of Brajmandal Parikrama, there was an arrangement where in the evening hour, there was an option. Persons could go visit places that they'd heard about during the day from Bhaktisiddhanta, because the evening was a little cooler and the daytime was a little hotter, so they would go in the evening and see places. Or they would stay and hear Bhaktisiddhanta speak. Prabhupada explained, I stayed to hear Bhaktisiddhanta speak. Sometimes I couldn't understand. Sometimes I could understand. But I sat and listened because I knew it was purifying. And my Guru Maharaj noted, he likes to hear. This was my one qualification. So during those evening talks, there was a question. Brajmandal Parikrama. Why is it that we see two devotees seemingly doing the same things? One is making rapid advancement, the other's not making rapid advancement. Why do we see that happening? And he told this story to give the answer. In Bengal, when there's a wedding, the family of the young boy, the groom, they go by boat, commonly, to the village of the girl, where the wedding takes place, and then after the wedding she comes back to the home of the boy that she married. So they, just making it short because I want to go to the 7th canto Bhagavatam. They get in the boat and, oh, happy day, wedding tomorrow morning, boatman, please take us to village such and such. And they take rest. And when they wake up in the morning, the sun is rising, and oh, happy day, wedding, wedding. They look around and they're in the same place. And they get upset with the boatman. You spoiled everything. The wedding is supposed to be today. And did you fall asleep? No, I didn't. I've been rowing all night. Then why are we in the same place you've been rowing all night? And they search and because he left the anchoring. And we have our favorite anchors, or our favorite attachments to the temporary. There's some things that we're very detached from, and we are just fine being, nice Hare Krishna devotees and worshippers of Krishna and things. And then there's some other things that are the obstacles. And the teachings of Prahlad help us overcome the obstacles which are needed in order to get not just to bhakti, but pure bhakti. He came to teach pure bhakti. So here's a nice illustration. Down here, that's King Prataparudra. You know who that is? You know Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya stayed in Puri for about half of his life. 18 years uninterruptedly as a sannyasi. And when he went to Puri, there was a king of Puri, and his name was Prataparudra. Prataparudra was a great devotee. So Prataparudra, the king, commissioned an artist who was a disciple of Vakreshwara Pandit to make a painting of himself with the associates of Lord Chaitanya. So he chose this setting where he's paying obeisances before everybody. And those of you that know Jagannath Puri, this is Narendra Sarovar. That's the Sarovar down here, the waves. And then the black and white marble checkerboard kind of looking tiles, that's just the perimeters of Narendra Sarovar. Here's Lord Chaitanya, there's Lord Nityananda, and there's Advaita Acharya. I know who's who because there's a Bengali version where they wrote it in Bengali and somebody gave me the meanings. Because I don't read Bengali. Back there with the beard, that's Srivas, and then there's Sarup Damodar, Jagatananda Pandit, Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the chubby one over there hanging up his clothes, that's Haridas Thakur. I don't know why he painted him like that. But what are they doing? They're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. Interesting. To commission a painting, one might think he would have them in kirtan. He didn't show them in kirtan, he showed them hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit, which deductively, that means they did this regularly. And it was one of Prataparudra Maharaj's favorite activities, offering his obeisances to all the Vaishnavas who were engaged in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And daily Lord Chaitanya would go to the Tota Gopinath temple, see the deity of Gopinath dance in ecstasy, and then hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. In case you didn't know, many of you know I'm sure, the deity of Gopinath is sitting down. In fact, these legs that are shown here, they place them there during Kartik month, and otherwise there's no legs there. Because he's seated like in the upper image. Because when Gadadhar Pandit, he was only 48, he was the same age as Lord Chaitanya. But when Lord Chaitanya left, his body became very feeble. His whole demeanor, everything was down. And so he couldn't place the crown and garland and ornaments on the deity anymore, so the deity sat down to make it easier. Lord Chaitanya, it is said, entered into the body of the Gopinath deity. Was such a, that's how he left the world. We celebrate his Gaur Purnima, but his disappearance pastime is amazing. They were having kirtan, he stood up and went onto the altar and entered into the body of Gopinath, and no one saw him ever again. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada liked very much to provide us the material, Srimad Bhagavatam and other transcendental sound vibrations, so that we could become purified by hearing the pastimes of Prahlad and Dhruva Maharaj and all the other wonderful teachings of pure devotional service found in Srimad Bhagavatam. In So I'm going to be covering tonight and tomorrow just a little few drops of the nectar from Canto 7, Chapter 5, because that's where the teachings of Prahlad begin. And Chapter 6, I'm going to just show you a little slide here. This is, of course, Prahlad on Chandan Yatra in Mayapur. But after he completes his teachings to Hiranyakashipu twice, and the teachers, Shanta and Amarka, once, he then gets into 2 chapters of teaching his friends, the classmates. So there's different audiences. The message doesn't change, it's just customized for the audience. Now at the beginning of chapter 6, Prabhupada writes in the introduction section, 2 sentences. By accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, who is in the Parampara succession, one will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. I underline. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need of material qualifications. So a few points quickly. Accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj. Now how are you going to do that? Because he was in Satya Yuga and it's a long time ago. And how are we going to find his lotus feet? His lotus feet come in the form of his instructions, and by taking shelter of the instructions, we're taking shelter of his lotus feet. Second point is, who is in the Parampara succession? Well, his spiritual master was Narada, and Narada is in our disciplic succession. So he's in our disciplic succession. Prahlad Maharaj is in our disciplic succession. Or we're in his disciplic succession from Narada. But one will be able to understand. What's up?
You like that?
No, I put it there.
Yeah. So
No, I think. One will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. We are all engaged in spiritual life with, different degrees, different trajectories of our spiritual activities. To go more deeply, to be more effective, to reach the goal during this lifetime, not just dilly-dally, but reach the goal during this lifetime. The mode of spiritual life is important to imbibe. Prahlad Maharaj is the teacher of that. Taking shelter of lotus feet, which means taking the instructions into our heart, is the way of understanding the mode of spiritual life. And very important also is in accepting this mode of how we live our life, there's no material qualification required, or negatively, there's no material disqualification that prohibits one from entering into this mode of activity or mode of spiritual life. Pure devotional service. No material qualification, disqualification. Unlike other activities that are recommended within the Vedas, some prior qualification is needed. This and that and that, and then you can begin. But for devotional service following the path of Prahlad Maharaj, it's not required. Fit or unfit, qualified or unqualified, pavitra, apavitra, doesn't matter. That's an important part of his teaching, and it comes again and again. So, chapter 5 begins right after chapter 4. And in chapter 4, we hear about this Maha-terrorist, Hiranyakashipu, who terrorizes the universe, and then he gets rid of Indra, takes over the king of heaven's position, and then he has this bright idea, now I just need to become eternal, and then I'll be God. I'm ruling heaven and earth, now I just have to become eternal, I'm God. So he goes to the forest to get immortality, and this long description. The demigods get all encouraged, he's gone, and so they come and take back their kingdom. And they find Kayadu, and they want to arrest her because she's pregnant, and Hiranyakashipu Jr. is in her womb. And Narada, in his uncanny way of knowing where to appear and at the right time and say the right things and fulfill Krishna's purpose, he shows up and says, no. Not a demon in Kayadu's womb. It's a great soul. Entrust her in my care just by hearing from Narada. No argument, no doubts, no yeah, but, they just accepted. They circumambulated Kayadu, knowing that a great soul was within her womb, and they returned to their positions. Meanwhile, Narada then took Kayadu. Apparently there was some lady's ashram somewhere in his ashram, and he instructed her in transcendental knowledge for a very long time. I say that because she was there for the whole duration of Hiranyakashipu's austerities. And how long were his austerities?
100 celestial years?
Yeah, 100 celestial years. And of course, there are different versions because there's different yoga cycles. But 100, that's a long time to hear transcendental knowledge from Narada. And she had requested from Narada a benediction. And he said, yes. The child in my womb should not be born until my husband returns. So he granted her that benediction. So different than, let's say, Shukadeva Goswami, who was, when he was born, had the physique of a 16-year-old. Prahlad was born, he was a little baby. So 100 celestial years. And he gave another benediction, Narada, that your son will not be destroyed or defeated by anyone. He died a natural death. His later Lord Nrsingadev said, you should rule your father's kingdom for the duration of the life of Manu. That's a long time. 71 yuga cycles long. Prahlad lived a long time. But Narada instructed Kayadu for a long time in transcendental knowledge. Prahlad heard. Prahlad didn't forget. Later he's asked, how did you learn this? My mother learned it too, but she forgot. She forgot because, a very logical reason, she was attached to Hiranyakashipu, so everything was fine when she was in good association, but that good quality of hers in bad association, she forgot everything. Her good consciousness became covered over, but not Prahlad. He wasn't attached. He had kindness and affection and all those qualities, but he wasn't attached. So when he was born, his father came back, got some of the benedictions he wanted, came back. Prahlad was born. Chapter 5 begins. He's now school age. His father put him in the Asura Kula, taught by the sons of Shukracharya. And after some time, and as an affectionate father would sometimes do, he cuddled his son, sat him on his lap, and asked him, very affectionately, "My dear son, please let me know what you think is the best of all the subjects you have studied from your teachers." Now, Prahlad doesn't consider Shanda and Amarka as qualified teachers. They're blind. And he's not going to follow a blind person or persons. He says this later. So when he hears the question, he's thinking, Narada Muni. Best of all subject matters are learned from Narada Muni. So this verse is, in my language, it's a foundational verse. Foundational in the sense that further teachings of Prahlad are supported by essences that are in this verse. Or say it another way. It's like a sutra, and then the other texts are unpacking the sutra. Or edifying, explaining this strand and that strand and the other strand. They're just expanding the meaning. It's a very important verse. It's the first of his instructions. So let's say the verse together. Tadu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvignadiyam asatrahad hitvarva bhatam griham andhakupam padam gato yad harim ashayeta. Just take a few words out of all of this. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but just by hearing Prabhupada over and over, I learned a few things. Dehinam. So there's Dehi and there's Deha. Deha is the body, and whatever has a body is Dehi. So Dehinam, plural, there are persons that get bodies. Looking around the room, there's a few of us that have bodies. And having a body isn't a problem, unless you think you're the body. You misidentify, that's who you are. Because when you misidentify self as the body, it brings in problems. And not just a few, like a whole package. And it's self-perpetuating.